Hello, and welcome to Skype Academy presents the Polycom RealConnect for Office 365. This is an introduction to Cloud Video Interop. I'm Cornel Bullens and I'm co-presenting with Adam Jacobs. So, my name is Cornel Bullens. I'm a Senior Customer Engineering Architect within the Customer Experience and Deployment team, and I work for Microsoft. In the next slide, I'll let Adam introduce himself.
Thanks, Cornel. My name's Adam Jacobs, and I work as a Principal Microsoft Architect for Polycom, and I am an architect for the RealConnect for Office 365 solution.
Today, we'll talk about Cloud Video Interop. After we talk a little bit about Cloud Video Interop and the whole introduction and the what it means and what it does, we'll do a deeper dive in the Polycom RealConnect solution. We'll talk about prerequisites, we'll talk about deploying and operating, and I've brought Adam Jacobs, who will be presenting from a Polycom point of view and take you through the entire operation of deploying and operating this. So please note that this is a point of time view. So we've recorded the session in April 2017, and the features and functionality we described are accurate as of this date. Note that Office 365 is going through ongoing innovation, and both Microsoft as well as Polycom will reiterate on what we have, and we'll keep adding features, and we will be making the solution even better. So we innovate on a constant basis, and the new features and functionality is added frequently. You can always find the latest training for Cloud Video Interop on aka.ms/sa-cvi, and you can go to aka.ms/Skype Academy for all of the remainder trainings. So the key takeaways for today would be that Cloud Video Interop provides interoperability between video teleconferencing devices on premises and Skype for Business Online. The Polycom RealConnect solution is the first provider of Cloud Video Interop for Office 365. And the overall experience for both the VTC as well as for Skype for Business remains the same throughout the procedures when using Cloud Video Interop. So let's start with an introduction. So why have we started working on Cloud Video Interop? So we know that many customers with existing video conferencing units want to connect to Skype for Business Online. There wasn't a real uniform approach to video interop, and we know that a lot of our customers had issues combining Skype for Business Online with their on-premises video systems. There were some solutions out there, but some of them were a little bit, well, hard to implement. We know that Cloud Video Interop can play the deciding role in interoperability between on-premises existing VTCs, such as telepresence or personal devices, to protect those existing investments. That's why we've started work on Cloud Video Interop.
So what is Polycom RealConnect for Office 365? Well, it's a cloud-based service, and it's an interface between Skype for Business online meetings and VTCs. The solution provides all of the translation and transcoding between H.323, standard SIP, and Microsoft's H.264 SVC. And it's the first Microsoft-approved cloud video interop solution. So from a high level, Microsoft has provided Polycom with an interface, a REST API that allows us to resolve the coordinates for Skype for Business online meetings. And when this is put together with our APIs and our integration, it allows an end user to create a video interop enabled invite, which we'll show you later on in this presentation, and VTCs to dial into those meetings, and behind the scenes automatic cascade between our video interoperability service and the Skype for Business online meeting. So let's talk through some of the productivity benefits. So first of all, as an end user, I can now schedule a Skype for Business online meeting and bring VTCs into that same conference. I can do it without any kind of plugins. I can just use my regular Skype for Business client, and I can also use one-touch dial for various Cisco and Polycom endpoints to allow them to be scheduled into the meeting also, so that an end user can go into the room with the VTC and just click the native calendar and do one-click join. From a device standpoint, we have a wide range of different VTCs that we're testing. The same supportability that we have for our RealConnect solution today is also applicable to RealConnect for Office 365. And we'll talk a little bit more about the different devices a little later on in this presentation. From an operational benefit standpoint, this gives us the ability to have a very similar intuitive user experience across both Skype for Business and my standards-based video room systems. So let's just take a moment just to walk through that workflow from an end user standpoint. So the first thing obviously I'm going to do is I'm going to create a Skype for Business online meeting. And as you can see in the invitation here, we have some new information at the bottom of that invite specific to a video conferencing device. Now, once I send that invite out, I can send it to Skype users and they can join the same way they joined today. I could send it out to a Skype room system and the Skype room system could join via its calendar. But I could also send it out to a Cisco endpoint or a Polycom endpoint and allow them to natively join via their calendars. Now, once the endpoint is joined in the meeting, then obviously if you're on Skype for Business, you get a very familiar Skype for Business experience. So if content is being shared, you see content in your stage, you may see the gallery view layout for video. And then from a VTC standpoint, you'd see the familiar layout on your Cisco, Polycom, Lifesize, etc. VTC. And if you had multiple screens attached, you'd see content on one screen and your video layout on the other. So as we discussed on the previous slide, we have a very familiar and consistent experience across both Microsoft Skype for Business and also video room systems. And as you might expect, audio and video is handled and translated between our service and Skype for Business Online. If, for example, I start sharing content, again, content is handled in the same way, and we will always choose the best and most appropriate codecs for each type of modality. So let's talk a little bit more about the different layouts that you should expect as a part of this service. So on the top part of this page, we've got the standard VTC layouts, and this would typically be the single or dual screen codec systems that we have, and they're seen in most rooms within many businesses. And then on the bottom half, we've got immersive systems, and immersive systems are obviously typically these multi-camera, multi-codec systems that in many cases take up a full room within an enterprise. So from a standard VTC standpoint, the layouts are limited to up to 5 active users today, very similar to what you see from a Skype for Business perspective. And so we're consistent at both Skype for Business and also with the standard VTCs. Now, when it comes to immersive rooms, we have added a new piece of functionality that we've taken from our on-prem RealConnect, which allows immersive multi-camera rooms to take advantage of the panoramic video. And you can see an example of that on the bottom right-hand corner of this slide. So let's talk through some of the RealConnect for Office 365 functionality that's available at launch. So first of all, this is a hosted service hosted by Polycom in Microsoft's Azure data centers. And those data centers are going to expand as we roll out globally. Scheduling is native scheduling or seamless scheduling is something that's available also at launch, and we're using the existing Skype for Business add-in that end users are leveraging today. And we'll have VTC vendor-specific dial-in details, and there's multiple ways in which we can bring VTCs into these Skype for Business online meetings. So click to join, IVR, and direct dial, and we'll talk a little bit more about that on the next slide. We also at launch have support for immersive telepresence rooms, and we talked about the layouts on the previous slide. And another thing that we're bringing is video-based screen sharing. And of course, this gives us the ability to do a much higher resolution, higher fidelity content sharing between Skype for Business 2016 clients and VTCs when full desktop sharing is initiated. Support for this service is being offered by Polycom. So if there's any issues or anything like that, that can be logged via a help portal. There's a documentation that's available online today, and we'll talk a bit more about that later. And the licensing is user-based, so it's very similar to the licensing that you'd have today for something such as PSTN dial-in conferencing. It's be sold via familiar Polycom channels. And the other thing to be aware of here is that this isn't a hosted VMR solution. This is specifically geared towards RealConnect or the ability to schedule Skype for Business online meetings and bring VTCs into those invitations. So let's talk through some of the meeting room challenges and some of the things that we look to solve as a part of this solution. And of course, this is also the different ways and mechanisms that we allow to bring VTCs into Skype for Business online meetings. So in many cases, video room systems have these remote controls. So we wanted to set out here to make sure that there was a very easy way to bring VTCs into meetings, whether it was one-click join via the calendar, which is one option. Another option would be to take the unique tenant ID and basically create some sort of speed dial. So you could go into a room, you could click a speed dial, and that would take you to a message, a voice prompt, I should say, that allows you to punch in the VTC conference ID and then take you into the meeting. And that's specifically for SIP registered endpoints. The other way of doing things is you can dial the entire string. And we create a dial string dynamically when the invite is created. And that's typically comprised of the tenant key, the VTC conference ID at v.plcm.vc. Now, for enterprises that have the ability to update their corporate dial plans, there are ways in which you could, for example, create a prefix, put in the VTC conference ID, and things such as the tenant key and the domain could automatically be added as a part of the gatekeeper or SIP registrar that the endpoint's using. So let's talk a little bit about the architecture. So as I mentioned earlier, we have various instances available today within Microsoft Azure, and we're going to be expanding them over time. Now, this is representative of what we have in the US, but as far as this example goes, it's also true for other regions as well as we roll out globally. So in this example, I've got an endpoint here in the West Coast, and as you might expect, we're using GeoDNS, specifically the Azure Traffic Manager, as a way to route that endpoint to the US West Coast instance of our service. Now, within that instance itself, we have multiple mechanisms for failover. So there's no single points of failure. We have load balancers, etc. Everything in there is fully redundant. But let's say, for example, that we have a complete outage within that Azure instance for whatever reason. We can dynamically reroute that endpoint to the next available hop or the next available instance using Azure Traffic Manager. So in this example here, you can see this West Coast VTC gets automatically redirected when we have an outage on the West Coast. So it doesn't just go to the East Coast, it would stay locally. And the important part of that is to ensure that where possible, that the endpoints are dialing using DNS versus an IP address. So the other thing that I'd like to talk about from an architectural standpoint is that in many scenarios, or most scenarios I should say, enterprises will have existing H323 or SIP infrastructure. So examples would be Cisco CUCM, it could be Polycom DMA, and when we launch, we're not suggesting that any of that gets ripped and replaced. So all of that can stay as is, but it needs to be able to dial out externally. So in this example here, you can see existing endpoints are dialing out to our service over the internet, and then via the Azure network, we're then joining Skype for Business online meetings. So next up, let's talk through some of the prerequisites for RealConnect. So first of all, of course, our VTCs need to be able to dial out to the internet. Now, in some cases, this may not be configured or it may be restricted. So your existing dial plans need to be able to allow you to dial out. And also your firewall needs to allow connectivity between your on-prem VTCs and our service. We have a test number, the 7357 at test.plcm.vc. This is a good way of testing the firewall and also the dial plan. And we have online documentation that's available that tells you about the required ports, protocols, and IP addresses that we're using. Of course, those addresses will be updated over time as we roll out more Azure instances in different data centers. As I mentioned earlier, your existing call manager or VCS or DMA will need to be updated to allow outbound dialing. And again, that test number can be used. And there's also a set of supported VTCs that we're testing. Now, if it's not in the list, and that list is published online, and I think we have some slides on that later on in the presentation, we are updating it regularly. And if it's not in the list, it doesn't mean it's not supported. It just means it may not have been tested at this time by Polycom. From a Skype for Business standpoint, the tenant needs to be enabled for modern scheduling. And this automatically happens when an end user is licensed, and also when it's provisioned as a part of the service. So when you're initially provisioned, you take a license key, that license key then activates your service, and we're going to talk through that in a little bit more detail in a moment. Skype for Business and Exchange needs to be homed online today. So that's another prerequisite to be aware of. We are in the future looking at hybrid, but right now Exchange and Skype for Business must be online. From a Windows perspective, Office users on Windows need to have Office 2016, click to run, and they need to have 16, 7668, 2048 or higher. Office for Mac and Outlook Web Access clients, they're being updated and that's coming soon. From a Polycom perspective, licenses need to be acquired through our channels, and the license activation takes place via a web app, and the link is there. That's webapp.plcm.vc. And user licenses can be assigned via the Office 365 admin portal once the license has been activated. And we're going to talk about that process in a moment. Availability. Right now, we're GA in the US and Canada. And the plan for Q2 is UK, Western Europe, and the Nordics. And then in the second half, we're going to be enabling the other regions that we have here. So we do have a set of endpoints that we're testing regularly as a part of this service. This is not the only endpoints that are supported, as I mentioned earlier. This information is published online and it does regularly change as we upgrade endpoints and add more different types of endpoints based on customer demand. These are, as you can see here, Cisco endpoints. We also have endpoints from Polycom as well, and we have the life-size 220 endpoint. But as I mentioned earlier, we definitely recommend that you go to the website and keep up to date on the different types of endpoints that we're testing. So next, let's talk a little bit about how we deploy Polycom RealConnect for Office 365. So as we discussed earlier, we have an interface between us and Microsoft. But to make this all work, we have to go through a set of provisioning, and we're using various Microsoft APIs to do that. So I'm going to now go through that provisioning process from end to end. So now we're going to go through a demo of provisioning our tenancy using the Polycom web app to activate our license key. So once we've gone into the Polycom application, we then need to sign in with our global admin credentials. And these are the credentials used as an admin to sign into the Office 365 admin portal. So we're going to click this hyperlink, and that's going to take us to a page whereby we get prompted to put in those admin credentials. Once we've done this, we're then going to be prompted to give Polycom access to our Azure Active Directory. And the reason why this is required is so that Polycom can post our tenant string into the Azure Active Directory. And this is referenced when someone schedules a Skype for Business online meeting where they're licensed for the RealConnect for Office 365 solution. So we're going to go ahead and we're going to accept that. And this is going to take us to the next part of the process. And in the next part of the process, we're going to authorize Polycom as a cloud solution provider. And we're going to give them delegated admin access rights so that we can add the new license plan to our Office 365 tenant. And once that's done, then license our users. So to do this, I'm first of all going to click Authorize. And when I click Authorize, that's going to take me to a page where I can then approve the CSP credentials. Okay, so I'm going to click Sign In here. And because I've already signed in with my admin credentials, these are cached. And it's then going to prompt me to accept the delegated admin rights and the partner agreement. So if I click yes there to accept the agreement, and then authorize Polycom as a CSP. Now at the end of this process, I'm going to talk you through how we can remove the admin rights. And you can see there the admin rights are assigned as well as the partner relationship. So later on, we're going to go ahead and we're going to remove that because we don't need that as a part of the licensing process. So we go back to the web app, and the web app now moves on to the next part in the process where we can take our activation key, which was sent to us by Polycom's order management team, and this is typically received in an email embedded within a PDF. And I'm then going to complete any missing customer related information. So I'm putting in my email address and also my phone number. And some of this information is already pulled across from the existing information that's available. And I'm going to accept the terms of service, submit. And now what we're going to see is a summary of our licensing entitlement. So if we just wait a moment, that should come back with the information. Okay, so it's telling me my company name, my tenant domain, also my tenant GUID, and it's also assigned me with a SIP URI that's got my tenant ID. So my tenant ID at v.plcm.vc. And there we can also see our license key and our entitlement. In this case, it's a 5-user trial license that expires on the 24th of April. Now, once this is done, I can then go and click through and assign those licenses to my users. And I can do that via clicking the Manage License Assignments hyperlink. So that takes me through to a page where I can see the new licensing plan that's been added. And I can see I've got 5 licenses and none are assigned. So let's go and assign one. And here's my user account, and this is a very familiar workflow that Office 365 admins are already familiar with. And I can just turn that license on and click Save. And it's that easy. So before we finish though, we're going to now go and we're going to remove the delegated admin access rights that we set up earlier. So if we go into our settings and go to our partner relationships, we can see Polycom. And now we can remove the admin rights, and this is no longer required. And if you add additional licenses at a later stage, this will not need to be re-added either. So you're good to leave this removed. So once your tenant has been fully provisioned, you can assign licenses in the same way you would any other license within the Office 365 admin portal. And you can use PowerShell, you can use the UI that you're familiar with already. And all of this can be performed in the same way it would normally. So when I turn on that user's license, their invite gets automatically updated. If that user leaves the business and I want to reassign it to someone else, I can turn it off and reassign it to another user. So no changes there, very familiar to the existing Office 365 admin experience that we have today. So here we have an example invite that's been scheduled by a licensed user. And this licensed user also happens to have PSTN dial-in conferencing. Now what you can see here is there are two separate conference IDs. One conference ID for PSTN dial-in, another one for the VTC dial-in. And the reason why these are different numbers is because in many cases, these users could be licensed for a different type of service from another provider, or they may not have PSTN dial-in conferencing at all. So all of this is dynamic and it's updated based upon the licenses that are assigned to that Skype for Business online user. Within the invite, there is also a hyperlink, and that hyperlink takes you to a dynamically generated primary dial string that can be used by VTCs. And this dial string takes you directly into the Skype for Business meeting. So there's no prompt for a VTC conference ID. And if you have different types of endpoints, for example, Cisco, LifeSize, etc., and you need a specific type of dial string, then you can press the alternate dial strings, which then in turn brings you a number of other different dial strings that can be accessed. Now, none of this is required if you're using Click to Join. It's just there for remote participants or participants, I should say, from other different organizations to dial in when they don't have Click to Join available. Operating Polycom RealConnect for Office 365. So where do I go for support? Well, this service is supported by both Microsoft and Polycom. And we put together some great documentation that's available within our online portal. And there is a link to that portal within the resources slide later in this presentation. And a lot of the documentation there will tell an admin how to configure their Cisco infrastructure and their Polycom infrastructure, and how users should have Outlook and Skype for Business configured to ensure that they can have the invites that are required to bring them into an online meeting. So I'm now going to hand back to Cornel, and Cornel is going to go through some of the key takeaways for this presentation.
Thank you, Adam. So the key takeaways for today were that Cloud Video Interop provides interoperability between video teleconferencing devices and Skype for Business Online. The Polycom RealConnect solution for Office 365 is the first provider of Cloud Video Interop. And the overall experience for both the VTC users as well as the Skype for Business users will remain the same throughout this usage. So, resources that are available for you to use after this training. First, training. You can find them at skypeoperationsframework.com/academy. Any feedback you have about Skype or any of the features of Skype, go to skypefeedback.com. For RealConnect for Office 365, to find their online support portal, you can go to cloudsupport.polycom.com/services. This has the documentation, the FAQs, video library, and the community. Then there's also the site, RealConnect for Office 365 from Polycom, and you can find that at the Polycom link below. You can also get a 30-day free trial to test out the Polycom RealConnect with Cloud Video Interop. you should contact Polycom and you can get a 30-day free trial with 5 licenses. This is available at teammicrosoft@polycom.com. Please note that this is available in North America only. In Q2, this will be available in North and Western Europe as well. Lastly, come and visit our community, the SOF community at aka.ms/SOF community. You'll find me and many of my colleagues there to help you out. Then there's also the SOF blog at aka.ms/SOF-blog, where we post updates to SOF like these trainings and other new features. With that, I wanted to thank you for your attention during today's training.